So a special inquiry committee is very important, especially in the Polish case, because I would like to emphasize that my knowledge is about Poland and the Polish case. I don't know many things about the other cases, so then we will have the explanation from other countries. But this Polish case shows one very important question. Are we able to protect democracy as a whole? Because free and fair elections, this is pillar of democracy. So if we are not able to do that, we'll have very big problem with democracy as a whole. The Polish case was in 2019. There are several persons who are victims of this illegal invigilation, but three of them very important and spectacular. The first one, this is attorney of Donald Tusk, the leader of EPP. This is not the coincidence, I think, but it's not the most important one. The second, prosecutor Wrzosek, the person who was against the illegal postal voting, maybe you remember during the COVID time, 2020. And the third one, the most important case, from my point of view. He was a chief of our electoral committee, the electoral committee of the biggest opposition party during 2019. If you remember, we had two elections during that time, to European Parliament in May and in autumn national elections. Krzysztof Brejza, who was member of our national parliament, was a chairman of this committee. And he and his family and his office was a victim of this illegal invigilation. The question is, who did it? That's very easy. Our government confirmed that has the system, and he had the system. Secondly, why and what is the result? I would like to emphasize that not any criminal case is even started. They have no any legal problems. He, Mr. Brejza, and his family too. Also the other mentioned people. So I think that the last question to our committee, which will start the work today, is to give us a general question. Are we able to protect democracy if the opposition, the politicians, the lawyers or the journalists will be illegally invigilated?
Thank you. Thank you. I will give the floor to Diana now, who can tell us about recent revelations from a very personal perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Voy a hablar en español, creo que tenéis.
I'm going to speak in Spanish. We have interpretation. As you're all aware, yesterday, the New Yorker, in cooperation with other outlets, broke Catalan Gate, which is one of the most widespread scandals we have currently detected. According to investigations, more lawyers, activists, journalists, family members have all been victims of this espionage case, the Pegasus case, including within the European Parliament, my colleague Jordi Soler, Toni Comín, and I'd also like to highlight the last 4 presidents of Catalonia have also been implicated on that list. This is extremely serious. It's indiscriminate espionage against a whole European democratic movement, which is a clear violation of our fundamental rights, including parliamentary immunity, freedom of expression, the right to association, and political participation. In our particular case, we were spied on, and by extension the whole European Parliament was spied on. All of our communications with other MEPs were tapped with the presidency's team, and this is a crime. This is a crime against 450 million Europeans, which is affecting the democratic norms of our institutions, and this is something which must not go unpunished. either legally or politically. Because of this, we urge the presidency of our parliament to act. This software can be acquired by states, and we have all too much information about who is behind this espionage, and because of this we would seek clarifications and responsibility to be shouldered by the Spanish state. In a few minutes, my colleagues will discuss Pegasus further. We are mindful of the fact that the Spanish state isn't the only European country involved in this scandal, and that there are victims from various countries, and because of this, I think that this committee is of extreme importance. We need to have a legal framework within Europe to face up to mass espionage, and in this sense I think the European Parliament has a critical role to play. As a member of this committee of inquiry, we have been working tirelessly to reach the bottom of this case and to compel those responsible to be held to account and to foster the necessary legislative changes to ensure that acts like this do not happen again, acts which jeopardise our democracy, the rule of law, and to ensure that this does not happen again in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Anna Donat from Renew.
Thank you so much. I want to remind everybody that how the Pegasus scandals outbreak started with naming one country, which was unfortunately mine, Hungary. The Hungarian government was the very first who had to admit it, that misused a software, a software which was implemented against terrorists. And in reality, our government used it against any opponent of the system or the ruling party. Opposition politicians, lawyers, journalists, and even students. There is a long list, and for sure all of you read whom we are talking about. This is why, since the outbreak of this scandal, I'm working really hard to make European decision makers understand it's not a Hungarian issue, it is a European issue. Because first of all, our government did everything to not talk about the scandal itself. The ruling party, Fidesz, boycotted all the meetings of the National Security Committees. Therefore, we have no official information. The opposition cannot get any answers. Therefore, I believe a European level, a special committee, inequality committee, is needed, because it's not one member state's government's decision that to look behind these scandals. Secondly, this case taught all of us that it's not about software or cybersecurity questions in alone. This is a question of democracy. It's about the fact that there are member states where rule of law, human rights, and people's interests are being threatened and ignored. And this is unacceptable. This is why I have taken the initiative together with my dearest colleagues Ruža Thun and Sofia Intveld within Renew Europe to set up a European Parliamentary Pegasus Committee of Inquiry, and I think this is really, really important. Day by day, we got newer and newer information. And the question is, if we're taking seriously within the European Parliament, there's not just an economic or a health crisis happening right now, and there's not just a war happening in our neighborhood, but there is a rule of law crisis, which we are stating for years. And this House stood up with a vast majority to start dealing with that. Then we cannot look away. And we cannot deal with these issues as some member states' inner political questions. It's not a Hungarian issue. As we've seen, it's not a Polish issue. It is a European issue. And I want to remind everybody that we have to work to find solutions and answers together. And until there's not enough European safeguards put in place, until that, we have to be really serious about banning or even moderating such tools, because until governments using against their own citizens, we cannot talk democracy. And Europe's supposed to be a safe space within the world for democracy, rule of law, and we should protect our common values. This is why we are MEPs. So this is why I'm standing here today, and thank you so much again.
Thank you, Anna. Our Greens EFA, Hannah Neumann, will give us some policy recommendations.
Sure, and I'm also the Vice Chair of the Human Rights Committee, and working on human rights around the world, we have seen for many years how especially by dictatorial and autocratic regimes, human rights, political freedoms have been misused, and many of us were afraid that surveillance spyware, also in the hand of European Union governments, can easily be misused for illegal and political purposes. And as you have seen today, and also if you research deeper into it, the Catalan Gate surveillance that was revealed yesterday is so far maybe the most systematic account for political surveillance in the EU. But as the statements of my colleagues show, it is by far not the only one, and I'm afraid we may see even more. And here we are not talking about some attack of dictators or autocrats in third countries. These cases clearly show that even European democracies are not immune to abuse this kind of software. And that is why we stand here today to send a clear signal. Political freedoms and parliamentary immunity are core elements of democracy, and we do not tolerate any attack on it. If you attack one of us, you attack all of us. We will have the start of the inquiry committee later on, so our policy recommendations do not want to preempt the discussion that we need to have there, and all of us, we have some ideas of what needs to change. But we need to make sure that we, as members of parliament, can work properly, and that this inquiry committee can really live up to its mandates. So we have, in this regard, 6 very clear demands. First of all, a clear and strong statement from this House. In the next plenary, we want to see a debate with resolutions about the importance of political freedoms and parliamentary immunity, and that we do not tolerate any interference into that. We want better IT protection to prevent new attacks. We want our phones checked by DG ITEC, those of our staff members and those of our assistants. There we need to step up capacities in the short term, and in the medium term, I think EU needs a body such as Citizens Lab, which is not based in the EU, that can exactly do this kind of impartial investigations that brought about the scandals we are talking about here today. Then we expect all relevant actors to fully cooperate with the Pegasus Inquiry Committee. This means full cooperation of Member States' governments and the Commission. This means we want to see the CEO of NSO, those who produce Pegasus, appear in front of the committee as soon as possible, and we need more information on the kind of hacking on the Commission, the scale, the scope, the source and the depth of attacks on commissioners and civil servants, including the case of Reinders that was brought to public last week. Then number 4, a ban on the use of Pegasus and other surveillance spyware against politicians, journalists and lawyers. Number 5, we expect our European Parliament President, Roberto Metsola, as well as the speakers of all national parliaments, to send a clear statement to the executive as well as secret services that such interference in the work of politicians and parliamentarians is unacceptable and will no longer be tolerated. And lastly, we really expect the European Council to have a sincere debate and condemn such acts of politically motivated surveillance in due time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Thanks to everyone. I now open the floor to questions. And I first look to the room. Are there any questions? You can also ask questions if you watch remotely. I see there are 3, so I will take them first. First goes to Maria Psara. And please indicate the media you work with and the MEP you want to address your question to.
Water is needed.
Online, and do you have... Could you press the speak button if not done yet?
Can you hear me now, maybe?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, thanks for the floor. My name is Maria Psara. I'm from Greece, working for the Greek newspaper Efemerida των Συντακτών, and I have a question on all of them because a Greek colleague of mine, a Greek journalist, was under surveillance with the program Predator. And this was detected by the Citizen Lab. According to allegations and publication, it was a national security service that was behind this surveillance spyware. I would like to know if you are aware of this case, if you know it, and if this is in the scope of your committee of inquiry, and because the competence goes to the member states. Do you trust the member states to bring light on this case, such cases, when the state itself is behind an action like this? Thank you.
Maybe two of you want to answer, and not four answers, but to take two other questions, and maybe there are even more. Yes, please, Andrzej.
Well, of course, we know Predator, we know the other systems. By the way, Predator has the branch, the system called Predator. The company has the branch in Budapest, as I know. So this is another interesting information to be investigated. I mean, by the committee to be sure that we have full knowledge about the cases. But the most shocking case for me is the illegal spying on Commissioner for Justice, Didier Reynders. This is really shocking to me. And of course, we have to have the full knowledge by good and very open cooperation with NSO as a company which was mentioned, but also with European Commission and with the governments. And I feel that this committee, the Committee on Pegasus, will be able to organize this cooperation in a proper and good way because, as I said, we are facing European Commission in 2 years. If we will have no full knowledge and also common standards and also some kind of new rules, we couldn't say that the coming elections will be fair and free.
Thank you. Anna, do you want to start?
Yes, I'm going to be really short. I believe, as I said, this whole scandal, which started this special committee's work, opened up another element or other dimension of a rule of law crisis. I could say that the scope of such committee has to always paying attention on a wider scope as well. What I mean on that, there is not a rigid list of what we can deal with or what not. We're going to work together with the LIBE committee. All these committees work supposed to build upon each other. I'm also a full member of the LIBE committee, and I'm already working on media pluralism and the protection of journalists because it's a cornerstone of democracy as well. I believe that this work, what we are doing in different committees, must build upon each other. Otherwise, the work in general, what the European Parliament is doing, is just for talking within these four walls. But it's not our aim. So obviously, even if there in the priority list are different cases to talk through, we have to pay attention this really important angle that this spyware software was targeted against journalists, which means it was targeted against the freedom of information, which is the basis for citizens to make a good decision once they're going to vote whom going to represent them.
Thank you, Anna. I have three more questions remotely. The next one goes to Thomas Miglerina. Please press the speak button.
You hear me now, yes?
Yes, we can.
Okay, it's Thomas Miglerina from the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't recall a single case where when it came to national security, somebody was sanctioned, particularly at the political level. Some of you might recall the case of the CIA prisons and the cooperation of European states with the interrogation centers. At the beginning, it was investigated by a Swiss senator. At the beginning, it was even denied. Then it came out that it was true. But as far as I remember, nobody at the political level paid any price. So what makes you think that at the end of your investigative committee, which, by the way, has limited investigative powers, if I'm not mistaken, the story will be different? Thank you.
I can briefly take that question and answer in two ways. The first one, I mean, we see legal proceedings starting now with regards to the Pegasus spyware that may bring individual to court or justice. The concept of our inquiry committee is, and that's also an answer to Maria, to stop having this discussion only in the national political sphere where it's about opposition and government, where it's about all these nitty-gritty national political debates, and to bring it to the European level where we look at political freedoms, at fundamental rights, and where our goal is to start a political debate about the regulatory frameworks that we need for that, about what should be allowed, what should not be allowed, on the basis of the many, many cases that sadly we see also mushrooming up across the European Union.
Thank you. Very, very briefly, please. Then I have 2 more questions.
Yep.
Andre. Or Diana.
Okay.
Diana? Who wanted to? Diana.
Diana first.
Yeah. Muy rápido.
Well, very briefly. I think it's absolutely crucial that we understand that this Pegasus Investigative Committee, when it comes to the specific cases, that's just going to be a springboard for wider discussion on the rules of the game and the wider framework that's going to apply across the board in Europe, so that we can prevent there being further such cases developing in the future. So that's what we're going to try and do in the committee. We're going to try and get the ball rolling so that we can have preventive measures in place in Europe. Now, obviously, we're talking just here about a handful of isolated cases. Let's hope that we're the only ones, but it's quite possible that more cases will emerge. We need to investigate this so that we can understand the types of laws, the types of measures that need to be put into place to prevent a repeat of this situation, so that we can protect our democracies at the end of the day. And the fact that we have a cross-cutting approach, that's going to be useful. We're going to have a very diverse, pluralistic approach, a diverse political approach, and we'll be able to draw on all that expertise in our committee.
Thank you very much. I will take 2 more questions, asking for brief questions and brief answers. First goes to Vincent Manancourt, and the second to Mos Appelblad. Vincent.
Hi, Vincent Manancourt from Politico. The Commission says that it's not for the Commission, it's for national authorities to investigate the misuse of spyware. Do you agree with this stance, or do you think the Commission should be doing more to investigate these allegations of misuse, especially in countries where there are perhaps checks and balances concerns? Thank you.
To whom does this question go? Anna.
Well, as I already said it in my introductory speeches, I think I already gave an answer why is it important to deal with it on a European level, and I think it's politically not taking responsibility to say that, oh, let's deal with it at the national state level. It means that we don't want to get into the dirty laundry. And we must, if we're talking about unity, if we want to build up not just an economical unity, but a unity of values and which based on rule of law, we have to deal with it together. Why I'm saying Hungarian laws right now are so weak that anyone can be wiretapped in Hungary without any consequences. There's no justification needed. There's no court order needed. The justice minister can just sign up on any kind of surveillance right now in Hungary. And they don't have to answer because they have 2/3 majority in the parliament. Yet that is a national question, how much the majority of a government. But it's a European question, how much Europe can protect European citizens. Because they are not just wiretapping anybody's. They're wiretapping, in a sense, they are not wiretapping terrorists, they're wiretapping anybody who has oppositional opinion and their families, wives, children, who has nothing to do with political involvement. So I think it's very much in a European level, and we cannot say that it's only a member state interest and it has to deal with national law.
Thanks.
And just to add 1 point, because the revelations of yesterday, where also 6 members of European Parliament were targeted, clearly show that it goes beyond the national sphere. I mean, which member state should investigate a targeting of a member of the European Parliament? That's one of the key questions. So also we have an attack on parliamentary immunity of members of European Parliament. We have people spying in on our committee meetings. This clearly, in addition to the arguments that Anna just said, show it's a European issue, it's a European scandal, and the European level needs to investigate in that. I would hope the Commission to be stronger. Well, then it's the Parliament that leads this time.
Thank you. Last question.
But maybe if I may add one sentence here.
30 seconds. And we have time.
I would like to add that I expect also the cooperation with the national parliaments, because we have in Senate, in Democratic Upper House, inquiry committee on Pegasus, but it is also a problem of implementation of good supervision, so also national law. And I hope that this cooperation, as it was said, will be, I would say, strongly organized by European Commission too, because it's our common common interest, common subject.
Thank you. Last question goes
Excuse
to
me,
Mose.
can we have a question in the room, please?
Yes, I was checking in the room. I didn't see anyone.
No, yeah, because I raised my hand before, but you didn't see me.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see it. Then we take 2 questions. Yes, please.
I can wait until the end. It's fine.
Then you will get the last question. Mose, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Musa. Brussels Times. It was said at the beginning that the list of suspected countries has increased since, besides the usual suspects, Poland and Hungary, to more countries. And you mentioned, the case of a journalist in Greece who's been hacked, and more seriously, the Catalan Gate case in Spain, where I think more than 60 persons were targeted and whose phones were infected. I just wonder if you know if Spain has bought this spyware. And secondly, whether there is a technical possibility for your expertise, which the committee inquiry, I suppose, will engage, if it's possible, let's say, to check the phones in such a way to discover who might be behind, the hacking. Thank you.
Okay, the first pass, I guess, goes to Diana.
Okay, yes.
Gracias.
Thank you. Well, in Spain we don't have clear evidence. We do have clear evidence. Yesterday we saw that one of our workers from this business had evidence. This is something that needs to become clearer over forthcoming weeks. There are lots of indicators about it being linked to member states, and the Spanish state has yet to respond to this case, which is ongoing. That goes for the Ministry of the Interior and other authorities. There needs to be international regulation there is international regulation in the field of human rights and other regulation internationally, which should provide us with information about who's been spied on, why, and what information has been gleaned, so that people can be tried should they be terrorists. We, however, have been spied on. We need to know why and what information they have. Also, member states who spy on people need to say who they are spying on and why, and what information they hold. Within this framework we have work to do, not only within the Pegasus Committee, but within the committee we will be working in that European framework to look into these questions.
Thank you, Diana. We have one last question, please.
Thank you. Natalia Segura from the Catalan News Agency. I wanted to ask you if there is a political agreement among groups to do visits to the member states relevant in this case, including Spain.
I can take it. We will have the constitutive meeting of the committee today, where we will elect the chair, we will elect the vice chairs, we will elect the coordinators, and there is going to be a coordinators meeting later on, where I think we will discuss or have a first discussion about the topics, but also the potential travels or concrete investigations. So at the moment, it's too early to make this statement.
Thank you. So we have one additional question. This is the really last one.
If it would be clear to emphasize even stronger, because we are individuals, or as we are staying here, we are working to establish the committee, because we think it is very, very important. But we don't represent the fractions, the parties. We are individuals because of our experience in Hungary, in Spain, in Poland, but we are only focused on our cases to have discussion on the committee level. So the conference is before the committee will be formally established, but we are happy that the committee will be established.
And it will meet in
10 minutes.
5-6 minutes.
Yes.
Jean-Pierre, last question. Press the speak button and ask your question, please.
Bonjour à tous, Jean-Pierre Strobans du Monde.
Good afternoon. Jean-Pierre Strobans. I am turning now to the fact that the Social Democrats are absent today. I wonder whether there's any significance to that.
I can quickly take that. As you are a journalist of Le Monde, you are very aware, I think, of the presidential race in France and how tight it is. And by the way, it's also a core concern, I think, to the future of the European Union and the rule of law, but that's just my very personal statement. And Raphael Glucksmann needed to cancel last minute because he has some obligations in that one, but he said everyone can feel free to reach out to him on political positioning.
And if there are any more questions to ask, you can do so bilaterally, and we're happy to answer them. Thanks to everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining.
Thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
afternoon.